Hello and what is up? It's your boy Real_Joshua, and this week I did a one-on-one training session with one of the best One Piece card game players in the Western region. His name is Joshua Impact Graham, and I'm going to show you the entire session from front to back that I cut down a little bit, of course. But at the end of the video, I'm also going to go over all the lessons that I learned and whether or not I think coaching is worth it in this sense. Before we get to that, first I want to say thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you have not already, and check out the description below. I have details for my Discord community and for my Patreon if you want to get involved in those. The guest today is Joshua Impact Graham. I actually have to pull up a sheet of his accomplishments because there are so many. He is a former Hearthstone Grandmaster. He is a former Yu-Gi-Oh! YCS champion. He's played card games since he was 12, and when it comes to One Piece, this guy is the top ranked player on Limitless when it comes to the Western format. He has won 4 tournaments, including 3 regionals and a treasure cup. He has 13 serial cards. The guy is an absolute beast, okay? He knows what he's talking about, and you're gonna find that out in this video. Also, notably, you will find that when you open up the sim, he is the first person that you see in there. If you've seen this image, you've seen him. That is Joshua Impact Graham. He has a Metafy where he sells master classes. He has one on BY Luffy, he has one on Shanks, he has one on Doffy, and he's got one coming out on Blackbeard soon. He also has a future pro players group, which is basically a paid group where everyone has these like weekly sessions and they go over all their gameplay footage. They get a ton of time dedicated to like going over their gameplay. That is full, unfortunately, but they've seen great results so far. Despite the thing only being open for a few months, a bunch of the players have actually gotten prizing in major tournaments. So I'm gonna get into the games in just a sec, but I want to really quickly disclaim, I chose games purposely where I misplayed, but I also wanted to get deeper insight into the smaller mistakes that I made. And that's what's nice about this video, is that we get to see a lot of the really big mistakes, but also the smaller micro mistakes that kind of snowballed into bigger deficits in these games that I very well could have won. So I will be back to recap everything once this session is over, but for now, let's get right into the games. Is it too much to start with a mirror?
No, that's actually the perfect thing that we can start with. There's so much to learn in a Doffy mirror. The Doffy mirrors are very, very intense.
And I feel like Doffy is got to be one of the most coachable decks, just because there's so many coachable in the sense that like you can benefit a lot from, you know, learning the more optimal lines, just because there are so many paths you can take and like so easy to leak just small amounts of value where if the game ends and you're like short 1k, it's like I could have squeezed that out somewhere else, you know?
So we kept this hand. I'm not really sure if we should keep this hand. This hand, you have Teach, but you don't really have anything to play off of it. I don't really like playing Jinbei early, especially going first. It feels like no matter what, you're giving your opponent just a free target to swing into. Because think about how the early game plays out, right, on your side. So you play Teach, you play Jinbei off the Teach, and you play another guy, right? What ends up happening on the following turn is your opponent also probably plays Teach or has set up their stack with Perona or whatever, and then they just get to swing into your Jinbei for free. Usually I try and force them to swing into a 6k body rested, but the difference between like a Weevil and a Boa is huge, right? Because at least Weevil replaces itself, whereas like Boa, you're kind of just throwing away a card also. So then you want to kind of think about how the game is going to progress in the next like 2 turns. So you play Teach, you play Teach, you play Boa, right? There's a good chance that your opponent goes like Teach Law and bounces your Teach and kills your Boa, right? Then we can go Jinbei Teach on 5 Dawn and then have 1 Dawn for the leader skill, but we don't have really anything to kind of go off of at this point. And then our opponent is typically able to play like 2 guys off of their Teach, or is going to be playing like Boa and another guy. So that's kind of how the early game usually plays out for most Doffy mirrors. So we kind of need to think, is our hand going to be good enough to fight through that kind of gameplay? And I think if we stuck with our current hand, which we did, but if we stick with a hand like this, it's probably not good enough to get us over the line. Usually going at first, you're at a bit of a disadvantage because you're pretty much down 2 cards. You're giving your opponent the first life for free, and they're always attacking to one of your rested bodies, right? So you're down 2 cards from the start. So we need to kind of think about, okay, is our hand good enough? Is our hand going to be finding cards that allow us to get back value? And if it's not, then I usually try and throw it away. Good examples of this are like Weevil is obviously the best one that you want to be playing with Teach early. Another one is the 2k counter law. I don't know if you're playing that, but I've been yeah,
I'm using your list from the last treasure cup.
Okay, so the 2k counter law is another one that you really want to get early. If you can go teach on turn 2 and then use 2k counter law and you attack your opponent's life, what ends up happening is on average they're at 6 cards because they play a Perona or something on turn 1. They take the life, they go back up to 6, and then you make them pitch a card with a 2k. So not only are you getting a card out of their hand, but now you don't have anything for them to swing into, so they're going to swing into your life. So you make up the difference that you would from going second. So it's like a card that like makes it so that if you went first, it's almost as if you went second. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Because you get the extra card back and you get an extra card out of their hand.
Yeah.
So you make up all the value difference. Then you would have like Jinbei plus a guy plus the leader skill on the next turn. So it really like snowballs in your favor. That extra guy you play, you could even go like Jinbei, another standing guy, and then you could play the law again. And then your opponent's in like the same kind of crappy position where they have to give you a life card because you have nothing rested to attack into too. So I'm a big fan of the law 2K.
Okay, so going first, looking for cards that help me kind of regenerate value while allowing me to put on pressure kind of at the same time. So like maybe Sengoku's, would that also work?
Sengoku's not as good as Perona going first. If you have Perona going first, that's like the ideal. I keep most Perona hands.
Right.
I would keep a hand with Teach if I had something to go along with it that I really consider valuable. So that would be the 2K counter law or Weevil, or just like any guy if I have a Gecko Moria as follow-up, because you can go Gecko Moria, get back whatever guy they killed, and then play it off the Teach, right? So you can kind of make up the value.
Yeah.
So that's what you're kind of looking for.
Okay, we can go on from here.
Sengoku turn 1. The opponent probably has Perona here. Here's an actual like little trick that you can learn. If you have like Sengoku Perona, but you already have Teach, if you start with the Teach instead of starting with the Searchers, you get extra value because you get an extra card that you don't like. You get to see an extra card from your life, and then you get to see an extra card from the top of the deck. So this is fine. This is good actually, because you can get the Gecko back to get back to Jinbei, or you can go like Weevil draw, and then you can get the Gecko. So I mean these are obviously like the nuts cards, right? Like these are like exactly what you want pretty much off of this boa, right? So the order doesn't necessarily matter. I think I would probably draw the Gecko, so that on 7 I can do like boa plus leader skill, because you don't always want to just be leader skilling with Teach. You want to be trying to sneak in like the free value that you can get from just like off the top of your deck sometimes, so that you're not like just using all your cards from your hand all the time.
I was kind of greeding out. I think my intention here was to go like putting into leader effect like Weevil or something like that.
Yeah, usually on this turn they dump a bunch of their cards, so this is like a Teach.
Yeah, that's what they
like some kind of
that's what they did.
Yeah, it's like a Teach angle almost always.
I was like, oh, okay, pudding doesn't actually do anything anymore here.
Yeah. So I'm never a fan of this play where you start with the Jinbei like this. It just doesn't accomplish anything.
For me specifically, or for the opponent, or both? For
either play, either player on these early turns. Think about how much stronger the Jinbei is next turn. So 2 scenarios are if you just have the Jinbei in your hand. Next turn you can go Jinbei plus a guy and then leader skill again. So now you have standing 5Ks and you can cheat it out into play arrested 6K. It's harder to swing into 6Ks naturally with the 5Ks, right? So obviously that's a bit of a benefit. If your opponent planned on using exact Dawn to attack 7, you can just protect with a 2K instead of a 2K 1K. Or if your opponent overcommits Dawn to go to like the 8 Dawn, it messes with their curve, right? So early game you want to rest your 6Ks, and then you want to keep your 5Ks standing. So basically what's going to happen here is your opponent's going to be giving up the Jinbei for free on this next turn. So it's kind of just like, it's like a pseudo blocker, but like, do you really want to be blocking with like your 0 mana guy? Like, I don't really think you want to be blocking with your 0 mana 5K. We here are going to give up our Jinbei for sure, right? There's no reason for us to block counter double 2K. Like, we just bleed all our cards.
Yeah.
Well, we know that our stack here is perfect, right? So we can go Weevil, draw Boa, leader skill out the Boa, and then we're gonna have 2 rested 6Ks, right? So we should probably start with a 6 into the 5, just to see what our opponent does before giving them any information.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I realized that after I did what I did here, which is not that. And this is what I determined was like, in retrospect, it was the biggest mistake that I saw this game. Even when I did it, I was like, why did I just do this? But anyway, you'll see. I kind of felt like because I had 3 6Ks on the board, 2 2Ks in hand, that I would have the option to aggro it out here a bit more. So yeah, I mean,
you should for sure be swinging into the rested body.
Yeah. This was like, when I did this, I was like, why? Afterwards, I was like, okay, this is clearly a bad play. But yeah, it was.
So we can go kind of into the why. So in the early game, the Dawn is tight for both players, right? Like the main resource here is Dawn, right? Because both people have a teach in play, right? So you can typically play like 2 4 costs in a turn. But that's like kind of the upper limit of what you can do with a turn, right? Mm-hmm. So you want to keep the board kind of under control and make sure that the opponent doesn't like get to keep guys in play or like as many guys in play. So it's typically a fight for the board in the early turns of the game. And if you can get ahead onto the board in these early turns in the game, it's really, really beneficial to you. If you just give your opponent life, like a free life here, you're basically putting them up to 7 cards in their hand. They're going to have the ability to not only defend their guys better, because they're going to have more cards to defend their guys better, they're also going to have just like extra attacks in place. So see, if you don't kill his guy here, we only have 3 cards in our hand. He can just like put Dawn on his guys and attack our arrested guys too, right? Which could end up being a big problem for us. And then he ends up being the one with the board control lead. We have 5 life. We are not necessarily in a rush to take life. Like we could go, like for example, if we don't swing with the boa here, the other boa, what we could do is we could just go 8 with our leader into the Jinbei. He kills our rested boa and then gives us a life card with his 2 swings. And then we have 2 swings back into his board. If he starts bouncing some of our stuff, then we have Teach to replay it. And then if he bounces our Teach, he's bouncing our Teach on our 7 Dawn turn, so we can go 4 drop Teach and then leader skill anyway. So it's like it's not the end of the world if he bounces that for us either. But leaving him with an extra guy in play, but then also resting our guys, is going to snowball into us losing either a lot of cards in our hand, because we only have 3. Right? Yeah. Or we're going to just lose our board. And then if we lose our board, our opponent can build up a big overwhelming kind of advantage on the board. Use like Law to bounce like our 1 guy that sticks around. And then we're going to be staring down like 3 guys from the opponent, or maybe even 4 guys from the opponent, with us only having like a teach in play.
I realized this was a mistake. I, at the time, thought, why don't I try this, where I'm like, I can get him under some pressure right now because, you know, being in a low life state kind of early, he'll have to dump his hand to counter out of my future swings, etc. But it didn't actually work out. So,
because what ends up happening here too is if you put him low life, but he just removes our board, he's gonna have a ton of cards in hand to protect his board. He's gonna have a ton of cards in hand to protect his life after too. Like, see, like he's like not even in any pressure to really worry about taking that. Like, he takes it, he's pretty happy about it. Now, when you want to chase the Jinbei, it's just as easy as a block 2K, right? So it's like, think about if we went down this path where we just go like leave our boa standing, and then we went 8K into his rested guy. We just immediately kill it, because I don't think he's gonna give us block 2K, 1K to protect the Jinbei, because then we could still follow up with a 6. Our opponent would be bleeding 3 cards there to protect his guy, and then like we had given him an extra card. He only started his turn with 5 cards in his hand, right? If he blocked 2K, 1K, and then gives us another 2K, he's drawing to 3 cards in his hand. He's in like basically the same position as us, but with like a worse characters in play. And I also just want to pull back just to the beginning. The only reason that he would even be under pressure here is because he threw the Jinbei away by playing it rested and playing the bow active. Think about how our game would have been if on this turn, and if we started with the boa with the teach and like left the Jinbei in our hand, and we saw that same stack, and then this turn we go Jinbei, Weevil, see the boa, grab the boa, 8K, we would be in the same position, except we would have a better board of guys standing, and then we wouldn't have lost the Jinbei. But also our opponent would be in the same position on his turn if he just had left the Jinbei in his hand to do it on this turn. There's also a benefit of keeping the Jinbei in our hand for if the opponent plays Law and bounces our Teach, because then on our 5-Don turn, it's so perfect they go Jinbei, Teach, and then Leader Skill again.
Yeah.
But you see how intricate these games are getting even just in the first, like, 3 turns, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, there's so much going on even just in the first, like, 3 turns in a Doffy mirror. Like, that's why this deck is just, like, so thought-intensive compared to, I think, pretty much every other deck right now. It's one of those ones where, like, you could make, like, one little mistake and your whole game is just gone, basically.
When it comes to leaving a body up, right? So at post leader effect, do you feel like this is just, it's bad to have 2 characters rested? Or like, when is the threshold of how many characters it's okay to have rested on the board versus just leave one standing, you know?
So in this particular scenario, I wanted to keep my guys standing so that I understand that my opponent has the ability to chase down my Boa twice rested. So if I play in a way that I don't give him 2 things to attack into, like, think about it like this. Like, if my opponent has 2 attacks and he kills the Boa with 1 attack and then he just goes into the other Boa with his other attack, I'm losing my 1 guy and then I'm at least giving up a card to protect it. Whereas if I leave my guy standing on this turn, I get to take the life. I'm at 5 life, so I need to try and find a way to get my opponent to give me that life card, so I have more options, more resources to defend my board in future turns. If I don't attack with my guys are in a position that they could potentially attack back into my opponent's board if they attack. So I don't really want to expose my guys with so few cards in my hand, because like, basically if I expose both of these guys, either there's a good chance that my opponent can force me to give up a 2k and a 1k, or to keep one of the guys alive and then still kill the other one. Whereas if I just leave only the 1 guy I cheated out with my leader for free, basically rested, then it dies. I get a card from my I get a card from my life, and then next turn I'm drawing Gecko. I can get a card from my trash and keep kind of going. But if I give my opponent the opportunity to kill 2 of my guys here, then there's a good chance that my opponent can build up a board lead of maybe 3 guys to 4 guys to my 1 guy. And if one of those guys is Law and then bounces my other standing guy, then I'm really in trouble. Does that make sense?
Yes. And I think, yeah, maybe if he only had 1 swing on the board, it might be a different call, but because he has just like the ability to always just swing into the second body, it's just bad. On the other hand, if I had swung at the Jinbei for 8k and they blocked countered, would you swing at it afterwards with the 6k?
Yeah, I think we'd be getting the same value back, right? Because he would have to give us 2k, 2k, 1k to protect it when he only had 5 cards in his hand, which means he's going to 2 draw into 3, which means he probably doesn't have the resources to take full advantage of his teach on the next turn either.
Okay, cool.
Pretty much have to let the guys die because bigger swings are potentially coming.
I think this is where I was like, okay, it's all falling apart, you know?
It's those early game decisions, man, I'm telling you.
Yeah.
Like, before everyone gets to 10 Dawn, I think is the most intricate part of the Doffy mirror. And then after everyone's at 10 Dawn, they both kind of have the ability to play out 2 to 3 characters per turn, and things can kind of go sideways. Or like, you have enough Dawn to do like Gravity Blade plus Teach in turn, or you have enough Dawn to do Jozu, Teach, Sengoku, and another guy, right? So once both players are at 10 Dawn, they have the ability to swing back the board. But in the early game is where you can get your most advantage here. Oh, yeah, this is tragic. Well, we're not completely. Yeah, and then we take this. This is actually a mistake from our opponent to attack with that guy, I think. So pause here. I'm pretty sure I know what I would want to do here. We can fill out our board pretty easily by going Gecko, get back Jinbei, Teach, Jinbei, Weevil. And then we have pretty nice swings into the rested Jinbei and the rested Boa. Yeah, we kind of just need to make up for the board deficit. I think our opponent gave us a window of opportunity by bouncing back his own Law, because now he kind of removed one of his own characters for free. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So we do this, we get back the Jinbei, play the Jinbei, we play the Weevil. So yeah, it's the same thing. Essentially, we're going to have one 5k guy rested. There's nothing we can do about it. It's just how our hand's going to play out.
What about this swing?
I think this is fine. I think our opponent very easily gives us a 1k, but they might not have a 2k. If they don't have a 2k, then we open ourselves up to the possibility of maybe racing them or something along those lines. I think this swing 6 to life is good. There was two options here. It was either we jam 10 into the boa, which is not like the worst option either. So like we kind of just like reset, and then he plays a board and then we play a board, or we just go for the 6 and then we just flood our own board again. So it's like we kind of just it's kind of just like we pick which turn we're gonna do what.
Okay.
Because either way we're gonna be looking for good trades in the early stages. The one issue with flooding the board now is he's untapping and going to 8. This is a fantastic turn for a Gravity Blade. Right, so he can go Gravity Blade with the teach and play. That's why typically going into the 7 and 8 dawn turns, it's very 7, 8, and 9 dawn turns. If you can bounce the teach, it's very effective to bounce the teach. That way you don't give him the opportunity to do a Jozu plus leader skill or Gravity Blade plus leader skill or Jozu plus Searcher plus leader skill or
Right.
stuff along those lines. Here we're still at a pretty fine position. If our opponent doesn't have Gravity Blade here and tries to do like some kind of like law play, I think it's a little too slow. Our opponent really gave us an opportunity back into this game by bouncing back his own law and not bouncing his Sengoku back. It's just free value to pick up the Sengoku for free. If he picked up the Sengoku for free, he could start his turn by playing Sengoku here, maybe finding another law, maybe finding a Gecko to get back the law if we killed his law, and then he gets to keep that like resource loop going. But he seems to not value bouncing back the Sengoku, which to me is like one of the main reasons to even be playing Sengoku.
Yeah, I feel like that's something that I have kind of personally improved it in my like play of the mirrors. Like I used to, I think, overvalue just being able to infinitely rebounce my own law, but I feel like it's a little bit more niche of a situation where it's like actually good, especially when I have a situation where I can bounce back a Sengoku. I feel like that's something that I'm learning more, is like bouncing back my own law a lot of the times. I mean, there are obviously times where it's insane, where you're like double bouncing it back with like teach and et cetera, and bouncing back 2 bricks the opponent's hand. But there are a lot of situations where I just prefer to like bounce back my searchers and stuff like that.
So the scenario where it's super good is when you've already won the board. Because then if you have multiple swings onto the board and then you do like law triple bounce with the teach, right?
Yeah.
Then you give yourself the opportunity to take all of those swings into your opponent's life, and it's like just like a good opportunity to set your opponent down low. But if you're doing it before you've already won the board, you're just giving your opponent too much opportunity back into the game. Like you see, like our opponent actually did the 10 jam into our guy here. Like I was saying, we just bought on this as a bunch of nothing.
I kept.
You can divide up the swings. If the logic is to play the Perona after, you can divide up the swings to make sure that it's definitely not continue to pressure life. I think you need to make sure that you don't fall far behind on the board. Yeah, imagine those are just like 8-9 swings into his rested 2 guys there.
Yeah.
And he's only tapping with 1 guy here. How much of a difference it would make. Then Gravity Blade would not be as big of a deal. Then Jozu would not be as big of a deal. You understand?
Yeah.
The logic?
Yeah, absolutely. This is a weird game to choose because I feel like that's how I usually play. But there's these random games where I'll test out a different approach. I usually play for like full board. But I was thinking like, okay, well, maybe I can create enough pressure here where I'm effectively getting rid of my opponent's value by like racing from like a kind of early stage of the game, just because it felt like the hand that I had was good for that. I also felt like pressured into doing that because of the way that like the mulligans panned out and because of the way that I like played the first couple turns, where I was like, okay, I'm really behind. I have to like find an alternate win condition, which is just to like, and it felt like I had the properties to rush down instead of going the other way, and just seeing kind of firsthand why that was like a bad idea, because there was positions where I was like, oh, I feel like I'm super ahead, I feel like I can defend this board, I feel like I can keep pressuring, and then all of a sudden it's just like it's gone. I think
Jozu. Yep. See, like imagine we just killed 2 of the rested guys here instead of just 1 rested guy. How much of a difference it would make. He would not be able to pressure us this aggressively with the Jozu. And now with us not having a Gravity Blade or our own Jozu, like the ability for us to kind of get ahead here kind of slips away, and we're if our plan is to aggro them, we should for sure be defending that, right?
Yeah. Saw 3 teaches on that one.
So imagine we just like gave up our 2k instead and just like protected our guy. What is the line that we have here? We could do like 7-7, play the bow a 9 or something, or like 7-8-9. Try and set up for this perfume win. If we're trying, gravity blade here is insane.
Yeah, here I was just digging for a gravity blade because I felt like I had it as an out.
Yeah, but we gave up our character that we wanted to play with it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it feels like we're kind of just like doing like a half measure here.
Yeah.
Makes sense. Feels like our opponent took that. They're crazy for taking that. You never, like almost never take 5Ks in the mirror. Especially when your opponent's so low already. Like there's a 2 life deficit here. There's a window of opportunity now for you to actually try and kill him. When there's that much of a life deficit, that's when you have to think, okay, like now it's go time. But you shouldn't even be in this position because he should never take the 5. Should just give up 1 card to keep that life. Because now what, right? Like Joseph again, bounces the teach, plays out another guy. Or it's also an option, I guess. But then he gets to push 2 life against us here. So now we kind of have to play. I'm not opposed to this. Yeah. I mean, now it all falls down, right? Yeah, you just counter. So now we got a Jozu and a Law, which are like the 2 best things that I think that we can get out of this. Yeah, bounce the bricks. Play the Law again, or the Sengoku again, yeah. Find another Law. We can go for like 2-turn kind of option. I don't think it's the Jinbei. I think it would be like a 2k in this particular scenario. And we're just going to try and jam as much life as we can. Maybe like 9k swing here. Because we're trying to just win, right?
Yeah.
But, yeah.
I feel like I was trying to like set up lethal more on the next turn by having an extra body.
I can see it, sure. Our opponent last turn took a 5 and then countered 3 cards with a 9. You know, like you see the ramifications of just like taking that 5.
Yeah.
Like he ended up giving you 2 extra cards when like he didn't have to at all. Gravity blade. Yeah. Now I think we're locked out of the game.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's the way that particular cookie crumbled. Kind of.
Like, let's think about how the early game panned out for us. Like we could have. It was definitely like if we go back, like we don't rest the Jinbei here. We just rest the Boa and let the Boa die. Then on the next turn we can go Jinbei Weevil, get the Boa that we stacked, and then we can go 8 into the rested guy. And then we would just be untapping with more guys. Our opponent would have to give us life cards early. We could be spending our time attacking his board and playing for kind of just like board control. But you now see the reason why I really don't like to put Jinbei out there rested on one of these early turns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it makes a big difference. Also, it makes a huge difference if they bounce our teach. Like if he bounces our teach here, not being able to go like Jinbei teach on the next turn and play another guy is a huge difference as well.
Right.
Because we would essentially be wasting like 2 extra Dawn and miss out on opportunity to get a guy in play. Yeah, we really want to make sure that if we're resting guys in the early game, there's 6k guys that replace themselves, and then we're leaving like the 5k guys standing as much as we can. And then we want to look for opportunities where we don't have to swing with our board, so we don't give our opponent anything but our life to swing into as well. That's a very old school kind of concept. We did that a lot in like OP2, OP3, like not swing with our guys so that our opponent had to give us life cards. I feel like these like old knowledge nuggets have like been lost with time, right?
Yeah.
So it's just one of these like early game fundamental things.
And it's weird because I think for me, it's like I need a way to heuristic it out And I think that's where it's like hearing it from a third party who's like, okay, we've done the math, and here you just don't swing, you know, where it's like, because a lot of it's always these like if then statements where it's like, okay, if they only have one swing that we're worried about, then it's okay to kind of throw another, then to rest another body. But if they have more swings where they can keep pressuring your hand, then obviously don't put the second body sideways, unless you've used it to get 3 cards out of their hand, which is kind of what we're talking about with the double boa on the board situation. But for me, it's like, I have these kind of 2 phases of getting better at a deck, where one is like learning the lines and not taking 3 minutes to think, okay, here I'm going to play, you know, what's the strongest thing I could possibly do with this Dawn and these cards in hand, et cetera, et cetera. And then after that, it's like, what's the tactical approach, right? And it's hard for me to do both without taking 5 minutes on a single turn. Even for you, like, you'll take a long time to take a turn when you already know the lines in your head, but all you're thinking about is the tactics and the longer, like, strategic approach to the game. Whereas I'm getting to the point now where I'm able to do that a little bit easier, because I'm now getting to the point where I can like understand the lines better. And I'm like, now I need these kind of heuristic ways of thinking about, okay, this is the situation, what's better for me to do here? And hearing something as simple as, you know, in this case, it's better not to swing because this, if I can just like rewind to that moment in my head, it's a lot more helpful than having to kind of like come up with that myself on the spot and like, oh, maybe we touched this different approach this time that I've never used before. Except, oh, it's not working, so I have to like go back and try what I used to do. You know, I think that's where it gets difficult to learn by yourself.
For sure. Not having to reinvent the wheel every time is definitely a big deal. One of the things that I recommend for any player to get better at the game is just get better at thinking 2 turns ahead. So for me, it's an exercise. I think about, if you're just getting into it, think about like, what are you doing on your turn? How is your opponent going to react? And then how does their turn look like? So I try and think about, okay, I'm going to play these cards and make these attacks. My opponent counters out of these attacks, and what does the board look like after all of that's resolved? And then they're starting their turn. They have all their Dawn. What are they going to do on their turn? And then once you get really comfortable of doing like a full turn cycle like that, then you have to start thinking, okay, what am I going to do on my next turn when their board kind of looks like this? And then what are they going to do back into me? Like it's an exercise. It's going to take a while to get good at even just like doing it the first turn, right? Like thinking, okay, what's my opponent going to do on their turn? And then after you're really comfortable with that, then you start doing the next turn and then the next turn after that. But you have to start somewhere. So it's always just start with the first, and then with practice, do the second, then practice, do the third. The more you do that, the better you're going to get at the game for sure. Because for me, all these card games are kind of just like a logic puzzle. Although the card games are different, like the rules and the mechanics and everything are different, it all comes down to the same, like, if I do this on my turn and he does this, and then I do this and then he does this, like it all comes back to that. It all comes back to working out the logic. So if you can get really good at that, you can pick up not only One Piece, you can pick up any card game. I picked up Lorcana for fun, and I made top 16 in my first of the challenges. Like I just picked up the game like
beast, dude. This guy's a computer, the brain of a computer. It's just having the insights of like that make it easier, the processing load, because there are things where it's like, okay, clearly we never swing at life here. That kind of statement where it's like, for you, simple because you've been in the situation so many times. The other thing that's worth mentioning here, and I think that makes it difficult for a lot of newcomers to the game, and for me a lot of the time, is that like you hear so much bad information from people. Like just when you go to locals, it's like, oh, you never do this, or like you always do this, and it's like lots of the times it's like both conflicting information. So it's like, and then you're trying to figure out your own path. So it's like there's so many sources of people, you know, information coming at you where it's like difficult to pick out what the right one is, you know?
And not only that, it's usually someone heard something one time and it only applies to one particular situation, but they're trying to apply it to all situations.
Yeah, or it was like last meta.
You ever heard the expression, if your only hammer is a tool, every problem looks like a nail?
Yes, yes. Yeah, exactly.
So very much that.
I've experienced that many times. The matchups that I'm having a lot of trouble with right now are specifically Shanks. I'm having a lot of trouble with, especially with this freaking quad Red Hawk build that they have going on, where I don't feel like I can do anything like ever. And I don't know if that's just like a deck building type thing where I need to change the list, or if it's a different way to approaching the game. So I literally grinded Shanks matches with my buddy the other night for like 3 hours and lost like most of them unless I saw the nuts and he didn't type thing.
I can for sure help you with the Shanks matchup. For me, Shanks is one of the easier Doffy matchups.
Okay, even with this like Yasop, everything. Okay, cool. 138.52, literally like 2.5 hours of me just getting crushed.
It's okay. I can help you with that. There's a lot of different tricks you can do in the Shanks matchup to gain value when you would think that the Shanks player would be winning, but there's a lot of opportunities that you can just easily win. I'll give you an example. So I would have mulliganed this hand for sure. This hand doesn't do anything. But so the primary game plan, of course, against Shanks is you want to flood the board as soon as you can. You want to play out as many threats as you can in the early game so that your opponent is not able to easily deal with your board, and you can get those repeated damage in, right? However, there are Shanks draws that can break apart your early board, and then it's like what you need to do to kind of pivot and change the strategy so that you can beat the Shanks players. So what is Shanks as a deck fundamentally? So Shanks as a deck, they play a very powerful card every turn, right? They play like a super good card every turn, but they're only playing one card a turn, and they don't have any way to generate cards. They're not like adding cards from their hand. They only have one way to draw, and it's situational. Basically, the cards you get with Shanks are the cards you get, and that's it. That's all, right? That's kind of just how it is. Your opponent, as a Shanks against Doffy, is going to be defending their life pretty aggressively, and what that ends up doing is they can get into a position where they're very low on cards, and you can switch to a full board control strategy and just start removing their characters. Similar to how you would play a late game against an L. Because they're only playing one guy a turn, you can just like chip in with your little bodies, you get them to give you a bunch of cards, and then you swing big into the rested guy with your leader. It's like a pivot kind of option if the early game did not pan out in the way that like it should. Like if your opponent goes like Yasop into Whitebeard, right? Those are like the kind of draws that can beat your early game rush. But typically, if your opponent's in those game plans when they have like the Yasop and the Whitebeard and they've been defending their life and they're still at like 4 life, but they're at like 3 or 4 cards in their hand, like what is really stopping you from going like a couple of 7k swings into the Yasop, get a couple 2ks, and then you jam like 10 or 11 into the Newgate, right? You can kind of give yourself an opportunity back into the game that way by just like removing one of their threats.
My problem.
We can go over that in a game.
Okay.
It makes a lot more sense if we talk about it in a game.
My problem with that is that I always feel like they always have got, by that point, they've already swung at me because they're, whether it's a Rayleigh or a Shanks or, you know, whatever, it has to be sideways for me to deal with it. Yasop, obviously I can bounce back to hand, but by that point, it's already gotten value in the form of like swinging with my life or something. So it almost feels like if they just keep swinging at my life, like what, like I can't get out of that really.
You can still get ahead. Shanks can only play 1 card a turn. Like their cards are good. 8-drop Rayleigh is good, but if you get into a position where you can play like board control against them, I'm telling you, like there's gonna be like 1 turn where like they just don't have bomb, and like they draw like a 2k for the turn, and like they literally have to just pass.
All right, let's go through.
So the issue with going with a teach line against them early, and you're gonna see, is it plays right into Red Hawk, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
If they don't have the Red Hawk, then you're chilling. Obviously, you're very happy that they don't have the Red Hawk here, right? So you're happy to just take early life. Wouldn't even think about countering this. You just need plays. Opponent plays like Hongo or something here, right? Yeah. You can do the same kind of like play with the Boa. The problem with this is it just feels like because we don't have anything really to play, like we're just kind of going a little slow. Those are fantastic for next turn. So I guess like this turn we just do the same thing where we jam with the Law. We do like an 8k swing with the Law, and we force them to pitch a card. We don't give them anything rested to attack into. We could leave the stack as is, do the Law, and then next turn we could leader skill out the Jinbei, which lets us play the Weevil. Right? Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
If we did it in the reverse order, we just get the Jinbei for essentially for free. I'm not a big fan of this as much because we're just like we're gonna need the we're gonna need the board space anyway for next turn, and we turn on the Rayleigh too. It's like a lesser thing, but still. Now you have to give the 2K. Just as a rule of thumb, you should give him the 2K he already knows,
Okay.
so he can't make more calculations about your hand. I would try and swing with the Croc into the Hongo, trying to see if you can bait out. Like the worst that this does is the leader skill, but that's why you should probably swing into the Hongo. If you remove the Hongo, so let me just quickly talk about removing the Hongo. If you were able to remove the Hongo off the swing here, that prevents a Rayleigh on the next turn from killing your Jozu, or even like a Bedback main or Newgate from killing your Jozu. If you can get the Jozu to stick, it's a very, very, very powerful thing. So that's why I would have kind of focused down on the Hongo here, just so that we don't play into a scenario where, because we're going to have our guys rested, right? So because we're going to have our guys rested, what's going to end up happening is like he can tap to remove the standing Jozu and then attack our rested guy. Whereas like if he goes popping a guy that's already rested, then he's not getting as much value. Or if he's popping the Teach as well, he's not getting as much value, right? Also, if you keep the Hongo in play and he just goes Rayleigh on a 5 and a 6, and then he can go attack 3K into 2K, like you still have to give him a 2K with that Hongo. So like the exchange just doesn't work out in your favor either way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I think like I go too much like just send everything face in this matchup. And honestly, I feel like that's my problem in a lot of matchups that aren't like specifically versus Doffy, where I'm like, just go face everything. Because I feel like I'm coming off of playing maining Boa, where I like place these super greedy lines like at all times. So I had that problem going into Doffy, where I would play these like super greedy lines, and I feel like I'm over adjusting to like send everything face, and then I just leave a Hongo sitting on the board for like 3 or 4 turns, and it just like
Well, it's just
destroys
picking
me.
up the value. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like you see how much like we miss out on like little opportunities, right? Like we could have even started with like attacking with the Teach into the Hongo.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, see right away, losing our guy. Yep. Now we have to guard because we can't block. So I mean, this is a good opportunity for us to go life, but I would start with the Teach into the Hongo because it's just a free attack. If our opponent leader skills that or gives us a card for that, then we're happy, right? It's just free. Right, and this is actually a turn that we would likely play over our like we don't need to play that. We don't need to play the
Weevil?
Perona. We already know that we have a Weevil on our next draw, right? We could save the Perona for after as like a refill. Like right now we're playing over like a real body or like a Teach that hasn't used its skill, or we're playing over a Boa that like is next turn gonna be back to full health, right? So think about like what we're doing on this turn. We can get a bunch of 6s across. We could also use the Teach to kill the Hongo. It's just free. We already know that we're drawing a Weevil too, right? Like we already knew that we could have got a leader skill into a Weevil too, right?
Mm-hmm.
We could have like attacked with the Teach into the Hongo, done a bunch of swings life and played over. I don't know about this. I really don't know about this. Because now you're just playing over a 6K body for free. Right?
Yeah, I was like laughing about how bad this play was after I made it.
Think about this. Like if we just attacked with the Teach into the Hongo, and then we know that we're leader skilling a Weevil, we could just like play over the Weevil, or play over the Teach with the Weevil after getting the value from the swing, right?
Yeah.
Because now, yeah, we just killed a guy for free, basically.
Yeah, it hurts. It hurts to watch, dude.
Now the Hongo's like in play, but that's why we review our games.
Yeah.
So if you review your games, you just get to see where you're making mistakes, what things you could be doing to play better, and now, like I think we definitely threw away a lot of potential value in this game.
Mm-hmm.
So I would start here with play Weevil, stack Weevil, and then probably attack with the Teach into the Hongo again. because realistically,
I don't know
this is
why
fine
I'm
too.
not doing
This is for sure overcommitting, because then he can just Red Hawk leader skill, kills the teach. Yeah, I don't know.
No, yeah, it's
But that's why we go over these gameplay things. Like we just see where we're making mistakes, and then we can adjust, right?
yeah.
So definitely seeing that, like, we had this opportunity to kill this Hongo. Like when you're playing against black and they have like a Tashigi, like the 3 cost, you would remove the Tashigi, right? The 4 cost, the 3 cost 4K that you rested to -2 something.
Yeah.
For the most part, you would remove it, right?
Yeah.
For the most part.
Yeah.
You have to think.
What
of
about a
Hongo
Brook?
as yeah, very similar. Like something that's gonna be picking up residual value against you every single turn.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like in this case where the Hongo is making your 5k guys 3ks impossible to defend, like you have to consider it. It's very similar to your opponent just like having a Brook in play, removing your guy every turn, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Surely you would kill a Brook, right?
Or bounce it.
Or bounce it, or do something to it, right?
But yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and by this point I'm like, maybe we could do something. And it's so weird too, because I feel like when I see this has been like again one of these like testing sessions where every game I'm like trying something different. Swing at the Hongo, don't swing at the Hongo. Do this, like, try this, try that. And then it's just I work into these situations where I'm like, okay, clearly that didn't work, what I just did. And I just spent like an hour figuring out that this doesn't work. Just do the math, bro. Just figure it out. Because this felt closer than like a lot of other games I had that I'm pretty sure I played worse this game than I did in other games where it felt further out of reach to me.
Yeah,
and maybe
I'm gonna be completely honest. This game looks like it should be a win. Like it should have turned into a win. But I can see where it's a loss now. He's very much a dragon away from killing you now.
Yeah, yeah.
You have to like touch John, attack 7, go Jinbei Gecko, and get back at 2k. But then we're looking at a position here where we're staring down 4 attackers to our 2 life 3 2ks.
Yeah.
Very easily we die to any rusher here. We die to a Shanks. We die to just like good Dawn allocation a lot of the time too.
Yeah, I ended up in a lot of those situations.
This is also probably just game too. If your opponent's gonna do this, he shouldn't have reduced the Jinbei. He should have just reduced the Weevil also. I mean, I guess I get it to make it so that, yeah. No, this is fine actually. This is fine. Your opponent did the fine thing. You can't defend it because he attacks with the dragon, so you have to let it die, and then you get a 1, and then we lose on the next turn after that.
Yeah, yeah.
But this game was out of reach pretty much when we didn't kill the Hongo on that 6th on turn. Like our opponent was very generous, even resting the Hongo there. Because like we had a boa that protected, like even earlier than this on the 6th on turn. So we had a boa protecting the guy, right? So all we had to do was give a 2k. So we just give a 2k, but he exposed this guy here. Now say on this turn, so pause. We know that we have a Weevil on our next thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
Say we start off with just teach attack Hongo. What's he gonna do? Is he gonna leader skill?
Probably not.
Is he gonna give a 1k? Maybe. If you do boa into it after that, is he gonna give a 1k? Probably not. All right, and then we can do the stack and then the Jinbei, and then we can get another 6 in with the Croc after. 7, 6, 6, 7, 6. Right, so say we go teach into the Hongo. Let's just assume he lets it die. Then we can go 6 with the boa. He'd probably block leader skills, I would imagine. Right, because this is a Jozu turn, you kind of have to assume that your opponent's going to play around like the common turn, like the common card for the turn, right? So he blocked leader skills, so it gets out of it for free. And then we follow up with Jozu bouncing the boa, bouncing the Rayleigh, and then we can go stack the Jinbei, play the Jinbei, play the Boa, attack 7 lead. He takes it. You give the 1-don to the Croc, and then attack 6 lead, and then he has to give a 2k because he's already used the skill. And then he has nothing in play. He plays Rayleigh and kills the Boa, attacks the Teach. But then we have a Jozu and 2 5k guys. And he has like 1 guy in play. We have a Weevil. We go play Weevil. We see our stack too, so we know that we have Weevil, Piranha, Weevil. We go like play a Weevil, draw the Piranha, leader skill at the Weevil, and then like put all our Dawn on our guys and attack, right? From there, it's just an unlosable position, I think, because we would have 5 guys to our opponents, no guys.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I think I'm underestimating the value that I'm able to take out from this matchup and how much I'm able to generate, like, just by making these different moves. And I'm just going too heavy into like all face all the time.
So 7Ks are actually really inefficient against Shanks. So you know how it would be really inefficient to go 7K into like Whitebeard leader or like red purple Luffy leader because they can just 2K out of it. Mm-hmm. So think about it like that. They can just go leader skill and then give a 2K for a 7. So that's very inefficient. It's actually the most efficient to attack them for quote unquote their baseline, right? So if you think of Shanks as essentially a 6k leader and you just do nothing but 6k pokes, your opponent has to give you 2k, 2k, 2k up until they give you the leader skill in a 1k, and then you can do 7ks, which are much more effective then.
Does that
make sense?
Yeah, that's a super helpful way of thinking about it. It's almost like the Nami White Snake thing, where it's like 5k is less efficient because when the threat of White Snake is there,
yeah, and even 7s are less efficient when they could White Snake, right? So it's like 6 is a good number. If they burn a 2k or they burn like one of the 2k events to get out of it, they're still giving you a card. Whereas if you do the 6k and you make them do the White Snake and then give you a card, now you know, okay, well, they're a 6k body, so like you essentially can just continue poking 6s and extracting a card every time.
Yeah, because I've always felt like, well, there's no way I can beat him on, like, I can outvalue Shanks, but like it's just crazy how, you know, just this slight difference of just attacking the Hongo here just changes the face of the entire game. Because I'm not seeing the like, okay, Hongo kills my Jozu next turn with the Rayleigh, and it's like, yeah, he has 7 in hand. There's probably a Rayleigh coming. So it's just crazy in this situation how much that changes just from this one line difference. But yeah, this is a lot of food for thought here. Are there matchups where you would play mostly face and just like
against Lucci is the main one. So Lucci has this like window of opportunity where they're really, really weak. So anything right up until they're like 9 or 10 on turn before they can do Moria with events, that's kind of where they're weak. So you want to get them into a position where they're at low life going into those turns. That way you can follow up with like a Teach in Law, bouncing their Rebecca, and then just like following up with whatever guys that you have left after they remove 2 and like potentially killed another one with Jack or something. Maybe you have like 2 guys that stuck around, or maybe like 1 guy that stuck around. But if you go like Teach, if you get them really, really low and then you go like Teach Law, bounce the Rebecca, do like, I don't know, like 9-9 or something, get them to 0. Now you have like a femur kind of win condition, right? Whereas if you spend a lot of time trying to control, like Doffy's mostly a mid-range deck. And what I mean by that is anything like aggressive, you want to take on a defensive role. Anything defensive, you want to take on an aggressive role. So because you can do both so well and you can kind of switch between what's working and what's not. Like I'm going to give an example here with the Shanks. Like if the Shanks is doing a really good job of stopping you from taking a bunch of their life early and just like playing like super defensive Yasops and stuff, if they rest like their 6k Yasop and like they only have like 3 or 4 cards in their hands, very easy for you to just like switch to a board control plan and remove their guys every turn. Because even if like they attack with their leader and you just like pitch a card to protect your one guy, and then like they attack with the Yasop, they kill a guy, but then you revenge kill the Yasop on the next turn, right? That really benefits you because you're a deck that can put like 3 guys into play in a turn and like they're gonna put 1.
Yeah.
So gives you the option to switch back and forth. But primary game plan is to get to 5 guys in play, which if on this next turn we went with that line with the we go with the Jozu, we would have 4 guys in play this turn. Or no, we'd have 5 guys in play, but one's a Teach. Then the Teach probably dies on the next turn to the leader swing, and then we go Weevil. We go Weevil, leaders go Weevil, and then we'd have 5 guys in play to his just the Rayleigh, and then he's like super far behind. Right? Because then he's not able to get. Because then we just like put Dawn on all our guys and go 6/6/6/6/6 until he gives us the leader skill. Then whatever Dawn we have left, we just switch to 7s once he gives us the leader skill, and then he melts like butter after that. He's just done.
Talking about the mulligan again, when we talked about how Teach on 3 Dawn turn isn't maybe ideal because it just dies to Red Hawk. What are you kind of looking for when you're going first anyway? Are we even looking to go first in this matchup, do you think?
So we want to go first for sure. Yes, Teach is a good card even if they have the Red Hawk. But the way that I try and do it is, unless I have 2 Teach, I want to go Perona, then use Perona to leader skill out a 6k guy first to make the Red Hawk on 2 Dawn inefficient. And then on the what would be our 5 Dawn turn, their 4 Dawn turn, I want to go Jinbei Teach. Then I use Jinbei Teach to get at a guy, because on the 4 Dawn turn, it's very unlikely that our opponent is going to have up the Dawn for the Red Hawk. They're probably going to pre-play a Hongo. They're going to have attacked our rested 6k guy for like 9 or something, and then we give ourselves the opportunity to flood the board. And then on their 6 Dawn plus turns, they're not going to have the Dawn to leave up the Red Hawk, so the Red Hawk never gets any value after that. So you don't give him the turn 2 Red Hawk, and then he's not likely going to get value from the Red Hawk for the rest of the game. Like, I would probably even blind leader skill on turn 3 before risking the Teach if I have a Jinbei in my hand. Like, if I can go Jinbei Teach on the 5 Dawn turn instead, I'd probably even risk the blind leader skill if I didn't have a Perona. But like, if you have a Perona, you see a 6k, you're just chilling. You're super happy.
What matchups do you think are good to go Teach, Jinbei, etc. on 3 Dawn?
Most of the time I don't do Jinbei. However, one of the matchups where I do it is Lucci, because think about how Lucci responds on their 4 Dawn turn. If you play a Teach and you play out a Jinbei and another guy, say the other guy is Boa, they on average are going to go Ice Age or Suru plus Brook and remove the Boa. If they go after the Teach instead, so say like they go like swing 6 and then play Brook and kill the Teach, then you're still untapping with 2 guys. You could if you played a Boa, your stack, right? Like you can set up that way. If they go like 9 into the Jinbei there, that's kind of the only punish, but you're still untapping with a Teach, a Boa, and another guy. Like a Teach, a Boa, and then you can go like play like another guy, right? Like you can go like play Gecko, get back Jinbei, leader skill out another Jinbei and another guy, right? Now you're at 5 guys and the game is over against Lucci. They don't have an early game response to that.
Yeah.
So it's still very much the same exercise of, if I do this, what's my opponent going to do? It's the same exercise always. It's just, you need to know what the Lucci player is going to do on their turn. What are their common 4 Dawn plays? Their common 4 Dawn plays usually involve a Brook plus Reducer, or Brook plus 6k, or they're going to go, or even just like Rebecca Brook or something, right? Like Rebecca, get back Brook, get back like a 2k that they used early, and then play the Brook and kill your Teach, right? That's kind of just their range of cards. Or they just go attack 9 into the Jinbei, right? So if you have kind of a response for each, then you can kind of figure out which line is the best. And that's why that's like one of the few matchups where I'm going with the Jinbei aggressively early. But it's funny because if I go second, the matchup plays out differently, right? Because they get to play the Brook on the 3 Dawn turn before I get to leader skill. So I don't want to play my Jinbei out on that turn off of my leader, because I'm giving them something to attack into twice with the Brook and the leader. So I would rather them just like remove one of my rested 6Ks, and then on the next turn I go Jinbei, Boa, another guy. So like I'm trying to pick a turn to do the Jinbei where it's very inconvenient for my opponent to remove the Jinbei. Because like, what are they doing after that? They'd be going to 7 Dawn, be playing Jack and removing probably the Boa, right? So if I do the Jinbei first, I have to give 2 cards to defend the Jinbei, or I just lose the Jinbei to, I could even lose the Jinbei to Sub Sheep Lucci on that turn, right? So I'd be really, really screwed. But if I just wait the one turn, I play the Jinbei with the Boa, I could potentially see another Jinbei off that. And then if I do, I'm putting 4 guys into play in one turn when my opponent's best play is to play Jack, kill 1 guy. I'm untapping with 3 guys. And if I untap with 3 guys there, my opponent's life is going to melt away, right? Like I'm just going to start doing a bunch of 7s and like playing like a Teach, playing another guy. And now I have a full 5 guy board again. Jack kills 1 guy, they play Moria, kill 2 guys. I'm still untapping with 2 other guys. And then I can continue the pressure. But you see how it changes from me going first to me going second, because it just changes their like range of cards that they can play based on the mana that they have available.
Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna have to honestly watch this back and re-walk through the steps in like half speed a little bit, because even knowing these matchups and how they go, it's like hard for me to envision that as quickly as you are doing it. And maybe that's just a matter of just seeing the lines more often and just keep on playing them. But I'm afraid that I build bad habits. I need to lock in my play a little bit more and just like make the good plays and like reduce down to like 1 mistake or 2 mistakes in a match where it's easier for me to pinpoint. Whereas if I make multiple mistakes early, that just like snowball into others, and it's like, but the nice thing is that I can like batch look back and, correct one at a time and be like, okay, here's where I made this mid-game mistake here. Here's where I made this early game mistake, and then not do that in the future. And part of that will come from just thinking more and trying to think more about what you're talking about here of like, what are they going to do next turn? How do I get out of that? But seeing those like tactical lines for me is a little bit more difficult with this deck, I think.
It just takes repetition. And also a really good tip is just do this, like I said, to record your games. If you record your games, I would say on average, I play 5 games and then I watch back all 5 games, trying to see where like I like misplayed or anything, or if I like stuck to the plan and the plan worked. Like I try and look for examples of like good games that I played well and bad games that I didn't play well. And I just try and like figure out, okay, this didn't work. Why didn't it work? And just kind of go down that kind of path and figure out what's working, what's not. If you're able to do that and kind of just figure out what's working, what's not, and you have a good plan going into all of the different matchups, then you're really going to get ahead. So my overall kind of process is I play a bunch of games, record a bunch of games, see what works, what doesn't. I write down what works, what doesn't. And then I formulate kind of like a plan going first and going second into all the different decks based on the results of those games. And then I try and refine the plan. And then once everything is kind of set to where I really like it, I just practice the plan, see how it works. And then I try and find all of the situations where I can deviate from the plan. For example, like against Shanks, right? I was just mentioning, okay, if my primary game plan of flood the board and attack them a bunch of times isn't working out because they have the removal, I also learned that, okay, in the scenarios where they're playing a guy every turn to remove my guy, plus they're countering out of my swing, so they're still at high life. Okay, well, they don't have cards in hand to defend their board. So I learned the deviation lines as well from just like the practice.
That's where I feel like I would almost be like, how do I know if I'm making the right assessment of a situation? Even when I'm like watching the tape back. But I think I would have to, for me to say anything about this, be able to just watch the tape back to begin with, because I don't do what you're talking about. And I feel like it would be just immensely helpful for me to just start doing that, because it would be probably more helpful for me to play 5 games, watch those 5 games, than it would be for me to play 10 games, And that's what I end up doing. I just grind, and then I just start getting tired, and I'm like not learning anything anymore, and I'm like trying new things, and I'm not seeing the matchups where I wanted to practice, and I just like go down this rabbit hole of like failure, and I'm like, what the hell is going on? How come I'm trying to learn, but it's hard, but I'm not using the right methodology, I think. So yeah, this is helpful. I've been writing everything down, by the way. I've been looking down at my notepad.
That's good.
But yeah, I don't want to keep you for too long. You got stuff to do, but I think we could probably maybe wrap up here if you got other stuff to do. All right.
Sounds good.
Josh, Josh, aka Impact, do you want to tell people where to find you? What you're offering, all that stuff?
All right, so you can find me on my Twitter, so at impact_onfire. I'm sponsored by Team Kayfabe Cards. Make sure to check out Kayfabe Cards. They also have a big store on TCG Player. They sell a lot of One Piece. They sell Pokemon TCG. Basically, they're one of the biggest stores. Make sure to check them out. Check out my Metafy if you're interested on one-on-one coaching similar to this at metafy.gg/@impact. I also offer these 3 to 4 hour long masterclasses once a month, where I just kind of break down the early game, mid game, late game, what you're trying to do with the deck, what the kind of plans are, and all the different matchups. I've currently done 3. I've done Black, Yellow, Luffy, Doffy, and Shanks. The next one that I'm doing is Blackbeard, so look out for that. And yeah, I would offer my future pro player tier, but we filled up, so I don't think I can manage more than 25 people at a time. So
yeah, just follow Josh on Twitter, and I'm sure if a spot opens up, he'll shout it out over there, right?
Yep.
And then also find him in the sim. He's the guy who's like looking at you in the sim. So, well, thank you so much, and yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one.
Take care.
All right, we are back. Thank you so much to Joshua Impact Graham for that. It was a hugely enlightening session for me. And, you know, a lot of people wonder whether or not coaching is worth it, right? And I will say it depends on what you want to do with the game. If your goal is to win a regional, yeah, I think it's 100% valuable. Obviously, these things are expensive. You're going to be spending a lot of money, but it's not a scam, guys. People spend $40 on a piano lesson every week when they know that they're never going to be a professional piano player. They do it because they love their hobby and they want to get better at it. And someone who's been playing the piano nonstop for the last 10 years can probably teach them a thing or two about this instrument that they love. The same goes for something like One Piece, except you actually have the chance to actually win a major tournament because a lot of other players are not thinking about the game on this level. I like to think that I am a higher level intermediate player. I know that I'm not the best at this game. It's very clear that I make misplays, and I think being a content creator makes it difficult to really commit yourself to getting better at the game. It's something that I want to do a bit more because I want to get better at the game. I love this game and I want to get better at it. But this really helps me to understand how much about this game that I don't know, how many ways that I have to improve, how many lines that I drop, how many macro level decisions I'm screwing up, how many matchups I don't fully understand. And like I said during this video, it is very hard to come up with those answers all by yourself. Now, maybe you are very confident in yourself. You think you never misplay. Well, good for you. You don't need training. You probably don't need to pay for any of these classes, and you will top a tournament all by yourself. Congratulations. That's awesome for you. But for players like me, for a lot of other players out there, these kinds of lessons can be very beneficial. Again, I don't think it's very necessary to play the game at a competitive level. I don't think that's something you really need to do. But if that's your goal, then these classes will be helpful to you. Period. Unless you're already super good at the game and you're already getting results without them. There are a lot of people who offer these, and I would love to collab with the higher level players in the future because I want to get better at the game. I want to help other people get better at the game, and I think I need to have this kind of insight on the channel for that to happen, at least above an intermediate level. But yeah, it has been hugely helpful to me. What I'm going to start doing now, I'm going to start recording my games. I'm going to start playing them back and really picking apart how I play and trying to figure out ways to better address these situations. Maybe go to my community and ask, what do you think is the best move in this situation? Really pick apart my gameplay and these really big swing turns and smaller micro decisions that I could have made to do better in these games. For the record, again, this is not a straight up endorsement. These classes are not going to be right for a lot of people. Just know why you're playing the game, understand what you want to get out of it, and if what you really want is to be a competitive player. And I don't think that many people should have that as a goal, guys, because it's a lot of commitment and it's a lot of work to do that, okay? It can be very worthwhile, but it is not for everyone. And I highly suggest that you play the game for fun if that's how you are playing it currently and you don't have a job's worth of time to dedicate to this game, okay? But if you want to get better quickly, if you want to be competitive, or if you just have a lot of money to blow and you want some tips on how to get better at the game, these are a great way to spend your money. So again, thank you so much to Joshua Graham. You can find me on Twitter at HiThereJosh, and you can find me on Twitch at real_Joshua. But yeah, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Later.